happy Friday. Norwich City, of course, back in action on the road this Saturday. The trip to Staffordshire and the Potteries of Stoke. Looking forward to it. Delighted to be joined by my colleague Connor Southwell for your preview show. As of course we look forward to this game. Connor, it's been another week since that Rotherham game. These weeks always feel longer when there's no midweek game and Norwich are doing well. You're kind of waiting for the next game to come round. How's your week been, and how much are you looking forward to another long trip tomorrow?
Yeah, always look forward to the away trips, despite Norwich City's poor form. But yeah, you're right. It has felt like a long week actually since that win at Rotherham. It felt like a lot has happened, but nothing's really happened all at once. But yeah, good to be here on a Friday previewing another game. I mean, one thing I did want to pick up on Adam is where's Johnny Howson gone from the opening sequence there? A slightly different number 8 in his place.
Yeah, I got a message from Paddy on Monday. A few of our Pink and Plus subscribers on the Q&A not very happy that Johnny Howson was still in our intro. We put, of course, a few engagement posts out on socials, and I think Vrancic maybe picked the top. I think there's a few legends, maybe those of an older sort of audience, maybe had sort of a few others, but I think the younger demographic just pipped them and went for Vrancic. So yeah, he's taken the number 8 slot for between now and the end of the season. Connor, of course, we haven't had the press conference yet today. That's coming up at 2:45. We had the update this morning that David Vagner, of course, is not going to be taking it this afternoon away for personal reasons linked to his family. It's going to be Christoph Bühler taking it. Just want to explain that scenario for anyone that maybe has got these theories in their head for other reasons.
Yeah, absolutely. You've mapped it up quite nicely there. So, as you say, phone call from the club this morning informed that David Wagner wouldn't be taking today's press conference for the reasons that you've outlined. Really, a private matter relating to his family. He wishes to keep that, or sort of beyond that, he wishes to have a degree of privacy, which he's absolutely entitled to, and his family are absolutely entitled to as well. So, I think it would be unwise for us or for anyone else to speculate on the reasoning behind why he might not be there. So yeah, we're going to be speaking to Christoph Bühler, which is going to be nice. Always nice to hear from a different voice and someone who has obviously been alongside Wagner throughout his career at Huddersfield, at Borussia Dortmund 2, at Schalke, at Young Boys, at Norwich, and even backdating that at the time at Hoffenheim and etc. So they've had a long-standing relationship. I don't think I've ever spoken to him before or heard any interview that he's done before. So it's going to be interesting from that perspective. But I guess the other update is that David Wagner is at this stage, and again, given the nature of why he's away, could be quite fluid, and we'll see how it transpires. But as things stand here, and I've not been told otherwise in the last couple of hours, the expectation is that David Wagner will be leading Norwich City tomorrow in the game against Stoke. So and I guess what's left to be said is obviously me, you, everyone here, and I'm sure all the Norwich City fans wish David and his family really well.
Yeah, I'd echo that sentiment. Of course, we'll get an update in terms of the squad news this afternoon. But of course, these things at the moment: Ono Hernandez out, Johnny Rowe out, Shane Duffy out, and of course, Yanulis was a little bit more of an update this week, not included in the Greece squad. Sounds like he's going to be out for quite a number of weeks with that hamstring injury. How big a blow is that for him, Connor? But also the chance for Sam McCallum, because it feels like there's been that kind of ongoing battle between those two for quite a period of this season, and of course, McCallum's now got a few opportunities to really show his worth.
Yeah, I think Sam McCallum actually since probably Christmas. I think he had a bit of an off day against West Brom on Boxing Day, but barring that, I think every time he's been called upon, he's been dependable. He's been pretty good. Certainly recently, there was it Watford or Cardiff? One of those games at home, he was particularly good, and it was Cardiff, wasn't it? That's right. And almost a weapon of a cross, and he adds obviously a long throw element as well, which I think away from home, particularly at Stoke, given the history behind them and long throws, could be quite useful. But it's a big blow for Dimi Yanulis. It'll be interesting to see what sort of timescale we're kind of given this afternoon. I think obviously a few weeks was the initial one. I think there was still some assessments going on in the background, but it's clearly a hamstring injury, and I think the issue is with hamstring injuries is that they can be quite complicated and they can be quite slow to heal. I guess we're seeing that a little bit with John Rowe at this moment in time. So whether it ends up being a few weeks or a little bit longer, and I suspect it probably will be a little bit longer, yeah, it's clearly a blow to miss someone who's been fairly consistent this season, and has also been a regular under David Vagner and has. I mean, you mentioned that debate, and it's rumbled on since basically Norwich City were relegated from the Premier League and Sam McCallum returned from his loan from QPR. That's rumbled on, and Nulis has edged that this season. Really, I think that's obviously at least in the mind of the person that matters. And actually, I think they are slightly different in terms of the way that they play. I think Nulis is a little bit better in terms of breaking presses. He's a little bit better technically. So I think Norwich might have to just tweak how they do things ever so slightly on that left side. And whether that means maybe Kenny McLean filling in a slightly deeper role on that left in terms of midfield wise to allow McCallum, who is very advanced in his positioning, as we know, to really be able to do that, because he does leave holes defensively, I think, a little bit more than Nulis does. But that being said, I think his end product, by and large, in the final third has been better than Dimi Nulis's has. So, yeah, two different type of left backs. And I think that's the one but that's the one thing that maybe they need to solve in terms of just quite how they approach it, in terms of having a different style of player in there. But yeah, in terms of what Vagner wants, which is super aggressive fullbacks who in possession go and sit on the final line of opposing teams, he will do that day and night. So I wouldn't expect to see too much change or there to be too much upset by that. But yeah, wonderful opportunity for him. And obviously, as I'm sure we'll get onto, there's a contractual situation for both of them, to be fair, but there's a contractual situation in play there. And I'm sure Sam McCallum will be absolutely desperate to prove that he should be somebody who is worthy and is deserving of a new deal beyond this summer at Norwich City.
Another player will be hoping to be deserving of an opportunity and another new contract is Jakob Sorensen. His first start at centre-half last weekend. Goal and assist, which was, a good return for him in that particular game. What did you make of his performance last Saturday? Would you expect him to maybe start there tomorrow? And I suppose the opportunity now for him to try and get himself in the squad these last 9 games and try and prove his worth and, make it a decision for Ben Napper and David Vagner in terms of, renewing his contract for next season.
Yeah, firstly, apologies if you can hear barking from my end. That's my dog. He always picks when I go live on video to go absolutely mental in the garden, so that's good. I thought he was good. Again, I think with everything last week, you need to caveat it with the fact of kind of the nature of the opposition they were playing, and I think we could all see that Rotherham were I'll be polite, they were struggling, particularly their forward options and their press was all over the place. So I would maybe argue that it wasn't the most difficult game to look impressive in. That being said, you're right, he did look impressive. He scored a goal. I thought his work on the ball was the most impressive aspect, particularly in a game like that. Okay, Rotherham weren't particularly solid in any of the phases of play, really, but the points where they did try and create a low block, and actually Borja Sainz's goal is an example of this. That starts from a really incisive pass from Jakob Sorensen, so he gives you that different aspect. And actually I was looking at this is going to sound very odd, but stay with me. I was looking at some of the pictures of him after he celebrated the goal, and there's a lot more muscle on him, and actually I was comparing it because someone posted. So there's a picture of him celebrating his goal last weekend compared to the one he scored away at Millwall last year. And if you look at his arms, I'm trying to say this in a way that's not weird, but if you look at his arms, they're bigger, they're more muscular. He's got more muscle mass on him. And I think it's clear to see that maybe he's been spending his time away working on the physical, definitely upper body elements of his game. But yeah, I mean, he is somebody who is capable in that area. To me, tomorrow feels a little bit more like a game for Grant Hanley and that kind of mentality and obdurate nature. I think away to Stoke, it poses a slightly different challenge to needing ball players at home. But if we rocked up to the Bet365 Stadium tomorrow and we're on Team News Live and Jakob Sorensen is partnering Ben Gibson, then I don't think anyone could have any complaints given obviously what they did last weekend. And he's someone who I think is deserving of another opportunity in that position. And actually, with time, feels like that could be his best one, particularly given what I've just said about him from a physicality perspective as well. And in many ways, his biggest strength and his biggest weakness at Norwich City has been that he can play in a multitude of positions. It means he's never really nailed down a one position in the side, but it also makes him super useful to whoever the head coach is at that respective moment, as Daniel Farker found, Dean Smith found at points as well, and now David Vagner is finding. He is, he's polyfiller, isn't he? He can go and play anywhere, and he'll go and do a job defensively and do it pretty well as well. So I guess that is another side of the left back debate as well. It wouldn't shock me, before the end of the season if we saw him playing there, either, as he did in that second title-winning campaign for a while. So, yeah, I think it would be nice for him to have a run of games. He was pretty open and pretty candid about his contractual situation last week, and speaking about how he's maybe getting to a position where he feels he might need to knock on the door and ask a little bit what's going on. Norwich have a year's option. Obviously, we don't know what sort of money is involved there to try and extend that, and what sort of budgets they're looking at this summer. Obviously, that's probably still a little bit fluid because, as we've mapped out before, there's still two outcomes really. They're either going to be playing Championship football or Premier League football. So yeah, I think it's a bit watch this space, but similarly to McCallum, you would hope now that he gets a run of games and an opportunity to maybe stake his case to remain at the club beyond the summer.
Yeah, there's been a few beneficiaries of the injuries of late. Of course, those have mainly been a couple of youngsters who've made their senior debuts. Finn Welsh, of course, against Middlesbrough midweek last week, and Kennebo last Saturday against Rotherham. I think Tom here on Facebook asking about any contract update. I mean, bear in mind he got some senior minutes, which we know from sort of his part and his agency's part has been sort of, I suppose, from their perspective, they've sort of felt he maybe could have had this opportunity earlier. David Wagner's obviously decided that now's the chance to throw him in. Difficult to sort of make an assessment of his debut because he didn't really get a lot of minutes, and Norwich was sort of cruising through that game. But what have you sort of made of the recent weeks and the youth pathway? We've spoken quite a lot about it this season, but it feels like maybe that's a sort of I suppose a silver lining for those two lads, that there's been those opportunities.
Yeah, it's a shame it's taken or had to take, players leaving in January coupled with a few injuries for it to happen, to be completely honest. But it has happened, and however it's happened, it's brilliant that those two have been exposed to it. Pedro Lima, as I was setting up to do my verdict last weekend, was kind of doing sort of sprints up and down the Carrow Road pitch. So he kind of been they always travel with kind of an extra one in their matchday squad essentially. So he was that one for the one at Carrow Road last weekend. So that shows that he's knocking on the door. He's not been involved in a few of the 21 side. So yeah, it's good. And I think the person who'll take the most pleasure from it is Ben Napper, because as I said, he has essentially attempted to create these pathways and open up these pathways in order for these type of opportunities to happen. And in terms of Abo specifically, I don't have any sort of update. I haven't heard anything fresh from as was the case a couple of months ago and weeks ago around his contract. But I think the suggestion is, and this is where Norwich City have a role to play, that he and his representatives would be for turning if there was evidence that he was going to get sustained first team minutes. I guess the caveat, and probably what he's waiting for and what they are waiting for as well, is actually when Norwich City have some of these options to return, John Rowe, Shane Duffy, etc., etc. You can throw into that bracket now, whether he will still be in as part of the matchday squad, whether he'll still be being brought on in games, because actually if he's not, then ultimately you've not really moved. All that's changed is Norwich City have seen their numbers reduced, and he's come sort of further forward because of that. And so I think for it to change, it would have to be regular minutes between now and the end of the season, coupled with regular match day squad appearances. And if those two things happened, then I think there's still very much a possibility that he may well decide that he's better served staying at Norwich City, particularly given, and I think you could all see it in that commentary video, just how close he is to John Rowe and what he's done and the opportunity he could be given. Obviously, then it's up to Ben Napper, David Wagner as well, to sell him and his representatives a vision about what next season could look like for him. So yeah, I think that it's still very live. It's still one to watch, but yeah, I've got nothing to suggest it's any different than it was a couple of weeks ago, which was that as it stands, he's obviously out of contract in the summer, and there were frustrations around his pathway. So yeah, one to watch, but brilliant to see. And like you say, I hope that we get to see more of him between now and the end of the season, because he's someone who's scored regularly. He's basically scored for fun at under 21 level, and we saw him play at Old Trafford for Norwich's under 21s against Manchester United. And for me, there was a lad who scored 4 goals for Manchester United that day, and Kennebo was the best player on the pitch. So that to me shows his readiness and where he is. I think I've seen a lot of debate about this. There's no point in him playing 21s football. He's above that. He's gone now. It serves no purpose to him. It's too easy for him. So yeah, he needs to be testing himself. I think if it's not in Norwich's senior team, then definitely in a senior team somewhere else next season.
Yeah, Stoke the visitors, also the host tomorrow. Sorry, Norwich the visitors there. Currently 19th in the division, just 3 points above the drop zone. Lots of kind of turbulence around that football club this season. A season that started with Alex Neil, formerly of Norwich City, of course, in the dugout, poached from Sunderland last season, actually before Norwich's trip up to the Stadium of Light. Lots of money invested in the summer, not really worked out for them. I think a couple of those players are maybe starting to show their qualities in recent weeks. One of those actually suspended tomorrow, Berger in the midfield, who I spoke to a Stoke fan last night on Terrace Talk, and he pretty much outlined Berger's their best player. So for him to be missing is, of course, a huge plus for Norwich. But what have you made of them this season, Connor, more generally, of course, you can almost split it into two. You've kind of got the Alex Neil era and the Steve Schumacher era.
Yeah. So again, I didn't watch too much of them under Alex Neil, barring them playing against Norwich. I thought they were pretty good actually when they came to Carrow Road, and as Alex Neil's team do, always very organised tactically, always press in a very aggressive and pretty well structured way. And actually, I think barring Dwight Gale basically missing his kick in the final minute, they could have left with a point at Carrow Road, and it was a pretty evenly matched game from memory. And obviously, it's not gone the way they would like. I think they're probably an example of too much upheaval in the summer, changing too much, because again, we went there last season, would have been around a similar time of the year, wasn't it, before an international break, and Norwich were basically played for a point that day, and it finished 0-0. And Alex Neil came out with some pretty scathing comments about the way they approached it. But then, I mean, you would have put money on Alex Neil to really improve them to the point where they could be top six contenders really this season. And then they went and ripped the entirety of that squad up, which seemed a little bit strange. And obviously the people who've made those decisions, Alex Neil, Ricky Martin, I think a few others behind the scenes have subsequently gone, and Schumacher's come in, and yeah, I think it's been tough for him. And actually that job for anybody, it's eaten people up and kind of spat them out again, hasn't it? Michael O'Neill, Gary Rowett, Nathan Jones, some really good coaches, particularly at this level, who haven't been able to turn that football club around. I guess from Norwich's perspective, it's a sign of what can happen when you come down from the Premier League if you make poor decisions and if you make the wrong decisions. So yeah, that's one aspect. But yeah, Schumacher, I think, is a really good coach. I really like him. Really like what he's done at Plymouth. Very progressive, and their home record, particularly again at Plymouth, was unbelievably impressive. And nobody needs to recall what happened when Norwich City last faced him in the dugout, and it's something that still gives me shudders when I think about it, to be honest. But yeah, look, I think it's been obviously quite desperate. They've brought in John Walters as a kind of interim technical director, and actually you look at their last 4 games, and I know that they've suffered 2 defeats in those, but the kind of numbers around the Cardiff game, which they lost 2-1 a few weeks ago, suggest that they probably did enough to if not get a point out of that game, certainly to win it. They obviously then beat Middlesbrough at home 2-0 in pretty comprehensive fashion. They gave Leeds United a really good game at Ellen Road, and again, didn't watch that game, but from what I gather and what I've read subsequently, they were pretty unfortunate not to leave with a point, and definitely gave Leeds plenty to sweat about, and we all know how good their Ellen Road record is. And then to go away and beat Preston, but not just beat Preston, deserve to beat Preston. I know the nature of the goals were a little bit fortuitous and whatnot, but Preston are a side who Norwich City are looking at, and everyone is looking at as playoff rivals. So the fact that they did it to Preston, I think they gave Coventry a good game a few weeks ago as well. There's just a slight indication over the last few weeks that their performances have increased, and I think what Schumacher spoke about yesterday is the need to maybe put some runs together, and it's interesting now to hear managers actively referencing Norwich City's away form. They know what it is, they know the possibilities that it brings, and that means that Norwich City are going to have to be prepared for another tough day, I think. And the nature of this division, particularly at the minute when it's bonkers, isn't it? The nature of it. Every team is playing for something at the bottom or at the top. And Middlesbrough is a good example. When we went there, there were people in and around the press box to me talking about them being dragged into a relegation battle, and they went 1-0 down. They won the game. They've won 3 games on the spin, and now they're 5 points behind Norwich and looking upwards. So it shows how crazy the league is, and they'll be desperate to do enough to get themselves out of trouble and out of talk of relegation. And that comes, as Blackburn did a few weeks ago, with real challenges and real risks for Norwich City. So it's going to be tough, and yeah, I think if they can survive this season, then I think it would be next season where you'd look at Schumacher after a full pre-season and after a full ability to bring players in the transfer window, then as a young coach with a really good style of play who could take them maybe to a place that no coach has been able to take them since they came down from the Premier League.
Yeah, tomorrow's a huge opportunity for Norwich. Of course, Coventry and Hull are not playing. Norwich at Stoke, who, as we've sort of outlined there, not had their best season. They have picked up recently in terms of their form, 2 wins in the last 3. But, as Dan points out here, it's huge to try and end the poor away form. It is that opportunity. And how big a game is it, Connor? Because, I mentioned there, it's a chance to build a gap heading into an international break to 3 points to Hull, but also extend your goal difference. And of course, Coventry, they could extend that gap to 4 points. I know those teams would have the game in hand, but you'd rather have the points on the board than the game in hand. That's how managers always reference it. So just how big an opportunity is this tomorrow for Norwich City to try and go there and of course get 3 points?
Yeah, it's huge, and it's one that they've kind of stumbled at, hasn't it? In recent weeks, QPR, Blackburn was an opportunity after obviously Hull and Coventry dropped points, and they were unable to maybe seize on that in the way that they could do. So the way I see it is as simple as this, really. If Norwich City win, then they remain in control of the playoff tussle. If they don't, they hand control to the two teams below them. That's the reality of the situation, and that should be the mentality of the Norwich players heading up to Stoke as well. There's been obviously so much talk about their away record. There'll be a desperation to put it right. It's something that maybe would have happened at Middlesbrough had not had what have happened, which has led to Johnny Howson getting removed from our title video, somewhat controversially. Had that not have happened, Norwich might have, we'd probably be talking about this in a slightly different way. So I wouldn't necessarily file Middlesbrough in the missed opportunities category, but yeah, definitely they need to show, and Sorensen spoke about it, David Wagner spoke about it as well. They need to win games away from home in this run-in, because to just rely on home form, which has been brilliant and utterly brilliant, and is essentially has been top six form over this season, is brilliant. But you don't have to put pressure on those home games and making sure that you maximize all of those home games if you struggle away from home. So they need to do themselves a favor. This is going to be this for me. I feel probably more precarious about this one than I did from games at Blackburn and probably Borough to an extent, but maybe that one was slightly tougher. I think this is going to be really difficult for Norwich, just with the attitude and feeling around Stoke at the moment. But you're right, it's there for them, and that should be a carrot that they desperately want to grab. Because if they would, as I said, right, the top of this answer really remain in control of their own destiny. And as you say, it wouldn't half pile some pressure heading into an international break with those two teams left to stew on, Norwich City having a 3-point lead or a 4-point lead as it would be over Coventry. That would be psychologically, I think, a massive boost heading into obviously the run-in of the season.
Yeah, we'll be live for another 10 minutes or so. So any last sort of comments, questions, I can see a few there, which we'll come round to in just a moment. But Connor, how do you see Norwich setting up tomorrow? I mean, that number 10 position away from home has often been kind of swapped around. You've seen Ashley Barnes there. We've seen Gabriel Zara more often away from home, sort of playing his sort of advanced playmaker role, which, a lot of Norwich fans and sort of pundits and all sorts have called for at different points. How do you see them going there tomorrow? Because Stoke, you know what they're like. They're quite robust as a side. I know Dan, I spoke to you last night on Terrace Talk, was saying that Stoke have kind of gone back to a little bit more sort of high front sort of energetic football more than they were sort of under Alex Neil. But you still know what you're going to get when you go to the Bet365. There's the sort of windy night at Stoke on a Wednesday, which of course we've not got that element, but we've got the Saturday trip there. So who do you see kind of playing in that role, and sort of any other change you could see David Wagner tinkering with tomorrow?
Yeah, so again, I think the centre back one is a big one. Do you bring back Grant Hanley, who obviously has just been named in the Scotland squad, and do you give him a go in this game? I think you probably do, but I must admit, I think performance, and understandably so, by the way, because of the injury that he's had, but I don't think he's quite found top gear yet, or maybe the gear that he would like in recent weeks. So, and then the midfield mix is interesting. I could see it going back to a McLean Sarah sort of double pivot, if I'm honest, in that midfield area, but just because and you documented it there, the type of game that it is, and then maybe Barnes in the 10 behind Sargent, with Fashnak coming back in on the right, which he does seem to favour away from home, and Fashnak has made has been better, hasn't he, away from home as a general rule of thumb, in contrast to everything else related with Norwich City. So otherwise, I could see it being obviously McCallum for Yanulis, but unchanged other than well, he started last weekend, so that wouldn't be a change, but as a decision. Otherwise, I see it being as you were, really, and I just think it, and we've seen and you referenced it there, we've seen Wagner maybe favour solidity away from home, and I could maybe see Nunez being the one that drops out as a result of that. But it's interesting what you say there, because I think what we saw at Borough in the opening half an hour was a side that really played into Norwich's hands, and that's why they were so dominant. They had a high line, but they weren't really pressuring their back line with the ball, and that basically enabled Norwich to get control and then play the balls that we know they love to play over the top. So if Stoke are going to pose a bit more of a threat in terms of pressing and aggression, then who knows? Maybe this is a game that is suited to Marcelino Nunez. But I just feel in my head that given it's a full week, and he tends to like that Barnes Sargent strike duo, and it's been very effective in recent weeks. Hard to argue with that. I could see him sticking with that, if I'm honest, and hoping that obviously Fashnak can come in after being dropped last week and really make an impact in that right-sided position, and probably be a little bit more pragmatic with that right side, as opposed to maybe what they were able to do against Rotherham, which was essentially play Gabriel Sara massively inverted. I mean, he was on the sheet as a right winger, but he wasn't quite a right winger in how it works. He was a third central midfielder, really. So I don't think they'll want to do that against Stoke, because of obviously then you leave yourselves vulnerable if Jack Stacey bombs on as he does, and he's been excellent in recent weeks. So yeah, that's kind of where I could see him going, maybe leaning on the side more of pragmatism and maybe being a little bit more conventional than they were last week in terms of selection.
Of course, we'll see what David Vagner chooses at 2 p.m. with Team News Live on our channels. We'll go into some of these comments and questions. James on X saying, is there any early links to players that Norwich could be bringing in the summer? I mean, you kind of outlined the contract situation and sort of Sorensen and McCallum, and of course it kind of differentiates on where Norwich are in terms of the Premier League, the Championship. I suppose there's also that element of kind of which players maybe come in for interest in the summer. If Norwich have to sell, then it probably opens up opportunities. But have you seen sort of any early links to individuals there, Connor?
No, not seen or heard anything at this stage, to be honest. I get the sense very much that they are focusing on the job at hand, and obviously they'll be planning going in the background. And there was a report in Portugal that Norwich had some scouts at a game. I think it was Porto against somebody. You might be able to step in, because the name of the club's completely escaped me. No, you can't help me. But there was a side that Porto beat that Norwich were supposedly scouting. Didn't say in terms of a player, but as a region, that's quite interesting. I don't think off the top of my head we've seen Norwich get a player directly from Portugal before. Obviously, they signed Guilherme Montoya last summer from Benfica, but he's obviously been one for their 21. So that's the only example that I can think of, certainly recently, which would be an interesting.
Ricky Van
Wolfswinkel, yeah, in terms of a little bit more historically, which worked out swimmingly. But there's good value over there to be had as a market. But no, beyond that, I think it's all pretty quiet on the Western Front. But like you said, so many moving parts this summer. I suspect that as the season rolls on into April and definitely into May, and pretty quickly after the last game of the season, be it they're not in the playoffs or after the playoffs, if they are in the playoffs, I suspect we'll see all of that fun and games ramp up pretty quickly again.
Yeah, Joe on YouTube saying he's feeling we're going to beat Stoke tomorrow. He's also booked his ticket for the Ipswich game. Of course, that is coming around quickly on the horizon. Such a big game just after the international break. But a couple of big games before that, of course, Stoke tomorrow. And with that, Connor, I think it's got to that point in the show. I'm going to ask you for a score prediction. I think Norwich have only won twice at Stoke since 1997, so it's not a particularly happy place to go, but they are unbeaten in the last 6 meetings between the two sides. I think it's 4 wins, 2 draws. So there's always these sort of permutations around these things. Stoke not great at home as well. So then again, Norwich not great away from home. So these things always balance themselves out. With that, how do you see this game going tomorrow?
Yeah, I felt draw before we started, and I feel draw even now. You've delivered those statistics. So I'm going to go for I think Norwich have got goals. They leak goals. I'm going to go 2-2. I think. What about you, Adam?
Yeah, it was. I think Dan I was speaking to last night, the Stoke fan, he went 2-2. But I think, given kind of the carrot that's there for Norwich this weekend and the chance to build this gap to 6, I'm going to back them to get over their away hoodoo and go for a victory. Going to go for a 2-1 Norwich. 2-1 Norwich. I think if Stoke would have had Berger available, I think that would have maybe changed my feeling. But given the Ben Pearson element, obviously we all know how much of a villain he is in Norwich City fans' eyes. I'd love Norwich to do a job on that scenario and, of course, get a victory over him. That would add an extra sort of element of sweetness. I'm still not over his antics from that Bournemouth game a few years back at Carrow Road. So, I think that will probably finish off the show. Connor, of course, the international break now coming up. Are you looking forward to it? I mean, these sort of periods for us are often difficult, but I think we've got lots of great content we've got lined up. So, certainly something for people to keep their eyes on the Pinker channels.
Yeah, definitely. We're working on a few bits and bobs to come off over the international break, which I think people will really enjoy. So it's worth taking out a subscription to Pinkham Plus in anticipation of that. Pinkham.com, the best place to go in terms of finding out a little bit more about that. I'm hoping I won't say any more than this, but I'm hoping to do a game next weekend. So we'll see if that comes off. And like you say, we'll have plenty across there. So yeah, I don't really like international breaks anyway, but at this point of the season, especially for friendlies, it feels a little bit, doesn't feel, at this point you just want games now. You just want to get through them because every game's so heightened and there's so much in all of them. But who knows, maybe if Norwich get 3 points and we get to look at that Championship table, them sitting pretty in the top 6 for a fortnight, then I think we'll all take stock of that for a little while. So yeah, maybe, I don't know, maybe it is a good point, and to speed up some of the recoveries of people like Rowe and Duffy that we spoke about. But yeah, as somebody who watches football and works in and around football and gets to report on football, he's lucky enough to do that. I always don't. Not a massive fan of international breaks, but yeah, like you said, we've got plenty of good stuff. Hopefully, to itch that particular, to scratch that particular itch over the international break. So, shall we say?
Yeah, a few late comments. Peter going for a 3-1 victory tomorrow. Dan Mayhew, also not a big fan of the break. He hopes it's a game abroad so you can see some great atmospheres. I think there's a Norwich City connection, though, isn't there, Connie? Not that you're going to give it away, but there's a reason why you're going to go and see a certain game.
Yes, there is very much a Norwich City connection, which narrows it down massively. And I'll also limit it down and say it's in this country as well. I'm not going abroad. So yeah, we'll see. Again, we'll see if it comes off. It's still not fully there, but it's definitely in the offing.
Yeah, and just finally, I just want to mention it because it's just come up in sort of the last hour or so. Manny Adeboyega, of course, on loan at Walsall's, picked up the EFL Young Player of the Month award for February. I mean, that's a great accolade and good to see these Norwich youth players out on loan succeeding, Connor.
Yeah, he's doing fantastically well, isn't he? And I've spoken to, I speak relatively regularly to a lad who covers Walsall, and he's been singing his praises, and so he's been magnificent, not just in terms of his goals, but his solidity and what he's offered them from a defensive perspective. And yeah, it's a real nice stable that Norwich are building up now ahead of next season. Abu Kamara is definitely someone you would expect to come into it next season, unless we have a Barley Mumba situation again, but we hope that's not going to be the case. And Brad Hills, another, Adeboyega, another, Jonathan Tompkinson at Bradford. I think he gets overlooked in quite a lot of these conversations, but I think he's someone that could come in and have a say in pre-season. So yeah, and there's going to be, as we know, because of what we've just spoken about, there's going to be centre-back places to play with, I suspect, because as it stands, it looks unlikely that Ben Gibson, more so Danny Bart, won't be here come next season. So they are going to have slots to play with, and there are going to be opportunities for these young players to really make a case for themselves, as they are doing at the moment. And yeah, some of them having superb seasons. He's another of them. And yeah, it's brilliant to see. And also he's been pretty regular goal scorer, hasn't he? Which has been something that we hadn't expected. And someone posted a minutes per goal rate. Obviously, Sargent was at the top, and I think he was about 4th or 5th in there since 2024. So that goes to show what he's done. So yeah, fair play to him, and really nice, as you say, to see so many of them flourishing out on loan, which is another side, I guess, of this kind of youth pathway element that doesn't really get spoken about, because the focus very much seems to always be on the ones in-house. But there are plenty who are out, who are playing football regularly, and who hopefully will have their say in the squad next season.
Yeah, Vicente Reyes, of course, another clean sheet during the week for Forest Green. He's been crucial sort of in terms of their turnaround. I think that will probably be it for today's show. We'll be heading to Colney very shortly to be speaking to Christoph Bühler. Yeah, looking forward to that. Actually, it'll be an interesting watch. Of course, we've not had, as Connor outlined at the start of the show, not had this opportunity to speak to him before, and it's always great to pick up a different perspective and a sort of different viewpoint from someone inside the Norwich City camp who, of course, works so closely with David Vagner. So that's definitely going to be worth a watch later on. Imagine that'll be up on our YouTube channel sort of 5:30, that kind of time this afternoon. So, of course, keep it locked. Subscribe to our YouTube channel if you haven't already. We're very close to 9,000 subscribers, so we'd really appreciate it if you press that subscribe button if you haven't already, and you enjoy our content. Of course, got the Plinken Plus app, as Connor outlined as well, $2.99 a month. You take out a free trial. If you don't like it, of course, you can bin it off, but we'd hope that you stay on our journey and join us in what we feel is a really good growing community. We've got a WhatsApp channel as well, which you can find down the top of our social sort of channels. There's a pinned tweet and a pinned Facebook post, and just follow the links there, and you can get all the Norwich City news directly to your phone. So that's well worth looking at as well. And of course, we'll join you tomorrow afternoon, 2 p.m. at the Bet365 Stadium. A huge game for both sides. Stoke hoping to pull away from relegation trouble. Norwich hoping to try and cement, and push themselves and cement their place in the top 6, which would be huge going into, of course, an international break. So enjoy the rest of your Friday. Enjoy your weekend. If you're heading to Staffordshire, safe travels, and hopefully you'll be rewarded with a long-awaited Norwich City away win.